Session 3 of the Stepping into Possibility workshop, Stepping into Possibility, are these 9 fundamentals that I'm sharing around how to navigate your way from the first half of life to the second half of life, to playing a game that you didn't necessarily sign up for, to realizing you can't play a game that you don't want to be in, to playing your game on your terms without compromise, all in and full out. And so in session 1, we talked about just waking up to this idea of playing your game. And so we covered um, the what I call the awakening phase, which was, the realizing that we're living just life kind of in sleepwalking mode through our daily routines, that we are being much more reactive than we are responsive, and we're being kind of dragged around by our beliefs, mostly false beliefs, and our reactive nature, fear, flight, or freeze, and that, and then that also talked about relationships and how we are the cumulative average of not only all of our connections, but all of their connections, and that if we are more intentional about who we spend our time with and who we give our attention to and who receives our energy, that these are all things that if we address them will wake us up to the fact that the game of life, we're not playing the game of life, it's actually playing us. And then that moves us into part 2, which was the acknowledge phase, realizing that you can't win a game that you don't want to play. And we talked about 3 of my favorite principles, which are receptivity, keeping open loops, considering multiple perspectives, questioning your assumptions, beliefs, and biases, and then restraint, realizing that more does not get you closer, that you don't need more knowledge. What you need to do is act on the knowledge you already have and define, what's essential and what's non-negotiable in terms of what matters to you. And then third, under it, the acknowledge is taking responsibility for your life, mastering life's fundamentals, living by first principles thinking, own what's yours to own and let go of everything else, and then setting and maintaining your guardrails and boundaries. So today is part 3, and the 3 R's that we're going to talk about today are responsiveness, resilience, and rewards. And so just I'm going to shoot through these pretty quickly, so this session might be actually even a little bit faster than 30 minutes, which will just leave us more time if you have any questions to share them. So when I say agency, what I'm talking about is being able to see, step into, and stay in and share your power. We are much more limitless in terms of our potential and possibility and promise than we can imagine. And what we want to do is, as we continue working on those 3 R's from last time, receptivity, restraint, and responsibility, we want to create some force multipliers in our life, points of leverage that we can use to amplify those things that we talked about last time, and then actually be building some of the things that we talked about in session 1, building new routines, moving from reactivity to responsiveness, and moving from unhelpful and unhealthy relationships to healthy relationships. So when we're talking about agency, what we're talking about really is power. The first R is responsiveness. So there's 3 concepts under responsiveness. The first is be the thermostat. And so the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat, and the thermometer is, what we are when we're kind of in that first half of life living reactively. A thermometer just reacts to the temperature of the room. It reacts to the conditions that it's in. A thermostat reads the conditions and then responds to them, right? You get to decide what the temperature is going to be, what the conditions are that you're going to be establishing for yourself. So that's this idea of being the thermostat. Don't be the thermometer. Don't be reacting to what's going on. Be the thermostat. Read what's going on, respond to what's going on, leveraging your agency, your power. Second, under responsiveness is make decisions better. So I know Penny's been to my stepping into possibility workshop like a dozen times, so she's heard this process before. I actually have two different processes, so I'll do a newer one. In the resource guide that you all have access to, there's links to additional. But one of my favorite frameworks is notice, name, navigate. Notice what's going on. Notice how you're, if you're having a reaction to what's going on. If notice, what false beliefs and biases are being triggered, what emotional reactions are being triggered. Bring your conscious awareness into the here and now, and again, notice what's going on. After you notice it, and again, most of the time we don't notice, we just react, and we just are running our default programming and conditioning. But if you bring your conscious awareness in and notice what's going on, you can then name what's going on. The name is very specific. Name does not mean listen to the narration in your head. The narration in your head is, oh, woe's me. Why is the world conspiring against me? Why are people trying to impede my progress? Why can't I get up? That's not naming. That's a narrative. Naming is strip away all the adjectives and adverbs, all the value judgments, tell your biases to sit in the back seat for a minute and name what's going on as plainly as possible. No adjectives, no adverbs, no value judgments. And then navigate is moving into this other piece that I've talked about around making decisions better. Is navigating requires you to employ your power of perception. So it's changing the way that you see things, and then taking a look at all of your options and keeping in mind what it is that you want. Take the next smallest step into that possibility. And then the third piece of the navigation step is remember what matters. What matters is the quality of your intentions and integrity, the quality of the way that you think about and act upon your decision. Decisions are not outcomes. And so the only thing that actually matters, the only actual reward is your ability to trust yourself, to trust the process, and to accept whatever destiny has designed for what happens next. And just one quick note on this decision-making thing. Remember the decision-making matrix. You can make a really good decision and get a really bad result. You can make a really bad decision and get a really good result. Those things don't make sense to us. Like if you make a bad decision and get a bad result, duh. Like, of course. If you make a really good decision and get a really good result, of course. But we get really tripped up when we make a really good decision and get a really bad result. And we look at the people that make a really bad decision and get a good result, and then we start saying, well, maybe I should do it that way. You don't want to do that, right? Just if you consistently make decisions better, time and randomness become your allies. Sooner or later, things will start to happen. The breaks will start to go your way, or more breaks more often than not will go your way than the other way around. And then the third piece around responsiveness is reserve the right to change your mind. Every decision comes with a reserve clause, because you're making a decision without knowing what the unforeseen obstacles and opportunities are going to be. So if you are navigating your way, somewhere, you get to decide, am I going to be a MapQuest person or a Google Map person? Because a MapQuest person prints out the directions and sticks with it no matter what. If the bridge goes out, they just keep driving. Makes no sense. But that's honestly sometimes the way that we treat these things. Google Maps adjusts as you go. If the bridge goes out, it takes you another way. And you may not end up going exactly the way you wanted, but you're still going to get to your destination. And it might even be possible that you arrive at a slightly different destination that's way better than the one that you initially set out for. So, we live in this world where that's, especially in the United States, is very contractual. Like, my word is my bond. If I tell you I'm going to meet you for lunch at Panera tomorrow, I'll meet you there, even if the building is on fire. Well, that's just stupid. Right. So one thing to think about is be very judicious about the commitments that you make and how you make them. And then, just remember that you always have the right to change your mind. When faced with new information or an unforeseen situation, you have the right to change what you want and how you're going to get there. Okay. Number 2, resilience. This is one of my favorites. First thing is a zesperometer. When you find yourself kind of consistently getting exhausted by the things that you're doing, you have to ask yourself, am I doing the wrong thing or am I doing the thing wrong? Most often we think we're doing the wrong thing and we just quit and we start doing something else. That's not generally going to be the best course of action. We have pretty good instincts and intuition for, knowing what we want. We have really bad instincts around how to get what we want because we are prone to more over closer thinking. We just think if we just add another tactic that somehow that's going to help us. If we add another thing to our to-do list, that somehow that's going to be the magic key that unlocks the path forward. It's actually not true. The fewer steps required, the greater the possibility that you're going to get there. So checking your zesperometer. It's possible you might be doing the wrong thing. You might be in the wrong relationship. You might have the wrong mentor. You might have the wrong goal. Like, be judicious about how you decide all that. But, just to give you one anecdote, I quit, I jumped into playing music for a living because I wanted to just not be the age I am now and look back with any regrets about whether I could have done it or not. And about 10 years into my career, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not, Hootie and the Blowfish and Edwin McCain used to open my shows and now they have record deals and and I'm still stuck here in Charleston, South Carolina. And I quit, put my guitars under the bed and, told my wife I'm going to get a real job. And she was like, yeah, I give it 2 weeks. And within 10 days, I was on the phone booking more gigs because it was truly the thing I was supposed to be doing. I was just doing the thing wrong. And so I figured out how to, get better bandmates, get better gigs, get paid by the venues. I just became more strategic about how I went about doing the thing I was really meant to do at that time. Second under resilience after the zesperometer is don't react, adapt. This is similar to be the thermostat thing, but with just a slight variation. I actually wrote down a note on this because this is a fairly new approach for how I think about doing this. So yeah, I call it finding solace in the slog. And so, if you are, there's all sorts of things that I could talk about in terms of how to create greater equanimity, peace of mind, tranquility in your life, even when life appears to be, going sideways, gets all turned upside down, is all topsy-turvy. There are all sorts of techniques that you can use for maintaining your equilibrium and your sense of peace of mind. One of them is that notice, name, navigate. Like if you stop the narrative in your head and just start talking about what's real, thinking about what's real and navigating what's real, you will actually it will become more of a game. It will feel more like a dance. It will feel more like play. It will feel more like this is just an interesting problem that I need to solve, and I love an interesting problem. And what what happens as you think about this finding solace in the slog is you actually start to embrace adversity. You are grateful for the opportunity to practice the new skills that you've been learning, through the first two sessions of this workshop. And you are able to better contextualize what's going on. You can maintain your sense of cosmic significance even when you are feeling a profound sense of personal significance because of whatever is going on in your life. So I'm big on gratitudes, like list your like be grateful for the abundance you already possess. You're sufficient even as you strive. You don't need anything else. You don't need any new knowledge. No new book, no new course, no new guru. If you just actually did something with the things that you already know, and if you were intentional and judicious about which of the things that that you need to employ to get what you want, you would get there far more efficiently, effortlessly, and effectively. And then the third piece under resilience is engineering luck with micro steps. And so I shared with you, I think it was last Wednesday, my piece on engineering luck. It's it's a really great process, but one of the things that it begins with is to like one of your cognitive biases, and one of all of our cognitive biases is all or nothing thinking. And what will create greater resilience is if you stop the all or nothing thinking and your need to confirm your beliefs, confirmation bias, and take little micro steps into possibility, try things, experiment with things, test things, and not like, just put everything on black 36 and roll the roulette wheel. You will be able to collect information that you can then analyze, and then you can create the strategy necessary to execute so that you can get a slightly better result the next time. And so again, engineering luck is about mitigating risk first through this idea of micro stepping, and then open loops plays into this. We talked about that in session 1, and some of the other things. They're all in that article, Engineering Luck. And again, the resource guide will link you directly to that article. And then the third and final one is rewards. The first one is my favorite, and that is that the process is the shortcut. You have to trust yourself, you have to trust the process, and you have to understand that the process is the shortcut and the process is also the reward. The quality of your intentions, the integrity of your motivation and your actions is actually what matters, because that's a reflection of your virtue, your values in action. In the first, when we started off, we talked about, how often we will espouse these values that are so very important to us, honesty, faithfulness, justice, whatever. And then if someone was to like be able to see us and walk with us through our day to day and catch us in our white lies, and see the way that, we, um, mistreat people that, supposedly we love, uh, and how we, cheat on our diet or what have you, they would realize that those espoused values are not things that we actually hold near and dear. What you want is your values, what you say you believe in, to align with your virtue, which is the way that you actually act in the world. And that's part of this idea of trusting the process. The process is a shortcut. Number two is this idea that life is an infinite game. If you have never read James Carse's Finite and Infinite Games, it's a short read. It's a great read. Some people find it to be a little academic, which makes sense because James Carse is an academic. But he actually has some talks about it on YouTube where he's a really great speaker and a really engaging storyteller. So if you're not familiar with his work, check that out. But the basic idea is, we play the first half of life as a finite game. You follow the rules, and the object is for me to win and for you to lose. That's a finite game. An infinite game is the rules are flexible. You can make your own rules. The point of an infinite game is to keep everybody playing and to bring in as many people as possible. And again, we live in a world that seems to reward selfishness, sometimes even cheating, certainly appears to reward privilege. And it's all based on this kind of idea of scarcity, like, oh, well, there's just not enough to go around, so you better do whatever you have to do to get yours, and everybody else is just going to have to, do their best. Good luck. But the truth is, there is an abundance of everything. In fact, the more the more opportunity we take advantage of, the more opportunity we create. It's not that there's not enough to go around. There's plenty to go around. And the more generous we are about sharing that abundance and teaching that abundance, the more abundance is created. That's an infinite game approach to the game of life. And third and finally, under the final piece, so this will be our ninth fundamental, is so the third under rewards is letting go is not giving up. And we talked about this, I think, on another recent call, but this idea of surrender. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is letting go of what was never yours to begin with. Surrender, your letting go of the suffering caused by your narratives of regret and guilt about things that happened in the past that you can't change. Surrendering your expectations for what you deserve or what you desire in the future. And instead, surrendering to the process and understanding that, again, the process is the shortcut, that the way you play the game matters a whole lot more than whether or not you win the game. The quality of your intentions, the virtue of your motivations and your actions. These are the things that actually inform your character. And what ends up happening in my experience is people that truly practice this idea of surrender, of letting go of what's not theirs to begin with, is that the things that they were chasing, whether it's you know, salary or revenue goals or status and prestige, or just stuff, those things, when those cease to be the ends in and of themselves, but we allow them to just become naturally occurring results of doing what you're supposed to do, the way you're supposed to do it, pursuing the right things in the right way. And the right things are the things that align with your values and guiding principles, that align with your talents and skills, and that in places where people share your values and need your talents to enhance your lives. If you can dial in those three things well enough at the epicenter of that, that's the difference only you can make. And the more that you lean into your unique ability, we've talked about unique ability in the past, the and the more you lean into that with that, intention and integrity and generosity and gratitude, the things that you used to chase just kind of become side effects of doing the right things at the right time, in the right order, with the right people. So that brings us to 9 big fundamentals with 3 fundamentals under each part, and then of course the 3 big fundamentals were all under 3 other individual things. So just to review real quick, we had the first step was awake, and then it was acknowledge, and then it was agency. And under awakening was routines, reactivity, and relationships. Under acknowledge was receptivity, restraint, responsibility. And under agency was responsiveness, resilience, and rewards. And this is all in that document that I shared at the very beginning of the call. I'll put it in the resource guide as well. So again, if you want the resource guide with more, some additional reading of what we talked about today, send me a message and I'll be glad to send a PDF with that has all the links to all the articles. And with that, we're gonna move into Q&A. Or we could just stare at each other.
Well, I have a question, and it's in part because of my resistance to the idea of shortcut versus getting gunk out of the way to find a better way to the thing. Because shortcut, and so I had this whole thing about, is the shortcut, is it a shortcut or is it a process that gets gunk out of the way? Is there really a wayfinder kind of aspect that is about getting better at finding the route, or at least finding your direction, even if you don't know a destination? Because as we were talking, because you brought up MapQuest and Google Maps, which got me just thinking about, what does that mean? In part because when I used MapQuest, I also had an arsenal of maps in the car at the ready, so I could figure out I could plot a different route, knowing basic things and knowing how to use maps. And I'm also very good at folding maps, so they're always nicely put back. But so this idea though, because the only time I've gotten truly lost, I never found it and just had to go home, was actually several weeks ago using Apple Maps. And it was because I didn't have a map and I only had the address on a very long road that had the same address in multiple little towns or little because the town would change, but I wouldn't know it, and it took me to the wrong town first. And they never gave me landmarks. They didn't give me the directions the way they would, in a way that, if I known it was by the Subaru station, I would have known I went too far when I went to the next town where Apple Maps happened to think it was, because they had put a parenthetical in their address, which goofed up when I hit the thing about getting it to the right town. So this whole thing. And it made me go, I no longer have maps in my car. So if I can't find it and I don't have their cell phone number, I tried for an hour and I was like, well, I'm just going to drive back home, and then the half hour back home. And I had to tell them and I had no way of and I realized, anyway, because that happened, it made me think about this. And then the idea of shortcut, I'm resistant to in process, because I just wonder, what is the value of a shortcut really? And I think it's short-term gains, like little tiny things when you want to get to a respite. or a marker. Maybe sometimes the shorter route is the way, but sometimes that's not. So I went on this whole thing about what's the difference between a shortcut and a quick start. Like was my first thing, like thinking, and like so I had this whole runaround in mapping and my dubiousness. Like I'm dubious when there's a shortcut. Like, well, but what do we need the shortcut for? Is it really about speed?
Well, let's parse it out a little because these are all great questions, and
I know. I'm sorry, it was a big lump, and I just kind of
well,
went
no,
around like,
because they're all tied together,
you know.
and my response is in your reaction. So when so I get it. I'm not a fan of tricks and hacks. Like if you're selling tricks and hacks, I'm not clicking. I'm scrolling by. Um, who wants to be a hack? Like really? And tricks are generally not true, right? The magician doesn't actually disappear the rabbit. It's a trick, and I don't want to be like I want to do real things. But here's how I think about the process is the shortcut, and it's tied to what you shared at the very beginning around this idea of eliminating what's unnecessary, pruning out the things that you don't actually need. And we talked about this in the second session around the more or closer over more, right? And so a shortcut is provides the shortest distance between where you are and where you want to be. And the shortcut is no longer the shortcut if the bridge goes out. But there's going to be a new shortcut, right? So it's so if you accept my that definition of shortcut, the shortcut is just the shortest distance between 2 points. Then what happens is if you look at your current process, so when I onboard a new client, one of the things we do is we basically I don't like I don't use this word, but it's essentially a diagnostic. Let's take a look at your situation. You know, you let's just say for the sake of argument, it's a coach, they want to get more consistent and higher revenue month to month, which is not a great goal in my estimation. I'd rather frame it as I'd want to work with 10 people instead of 3 people a month. But regardless, if I look at all the things that they're doing, less than 20% are actually getting them any results. And the amount of time that they're spending on trying to get business is like 8 hours a day. And the amount of time that they're doing the thing that they actually love to do is less than 2 hours a day. So the first thing is, okay, let's look at everything that you're doing. And I'm going to say, and we're going to case it. We're going to collect the data. We're going to analyze it. We're going to strategize and execute. And what ends up happening is we eliminate 80% of the stuff that they're doing, which immediately frees up revenue, time, attention, and energy. And we double down on the fundamentals. And my personal belief is any result that you want there's probably 3 things that you need to get right. So for instance, a coach that wants to increase the revenue by working with 10 quality clients a month. What do they need? They need an offer that's irresistible enough for and identify an audience that's eager enough and come up with a 30-minute a day sales strategy that gets that offer in front of their audience. They need those 3 things. What do? I need a logo. I need a website. I need a lead magnet. I need an email list. I need sequences for my email list. I need a YouTube channel, an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a Twitter account or X account. I need a webinar. Everybody says I need a webinar. None of that matters. If you just worked on crafting an offer that spoke to the problem or aspiration that your ideal client wants and consistently show up with messaging that lets them see the value of working with you, you will, over time, and it's less time, you will get what you want. So long way of answering that part around, a shortcut. The shortcut is actually in the pruning, just like you were talking about. It's not about what else do I need to do? It's like, no, let's take away all the things that you should stop doing. Let's focus and raise the floor on all the things that you should be doing. And that's going to create the shortest distance between where you are and where you want to be, and give you more time, attention, energy, revenue, and peace of mind, joy, and allow you to be a little bit more playful in the way that you're working towards what it is that you want. And as far as the Google Maps versus MapQuest, I didn't say anything about Apple Maps because nobody in their right mind uses Apple Maps.
I wound up accidentally on that because I touched the thing and then it opened up and I didn't know which one I was in. So I was like,
Go with Waze, which is Google Maps, anyways. So,
Waze doesn't talk to my watch though, so it's harder to get it
oh
to in
yeah,
the car.
yeah. You don't want your watch to get lonely, for sure.
Anyway, well, the watch is easy to talk to me because it makes a little thing happen on my wrist, and then I know like, oh, the thing's like about to happen. I better pay attention to the route. And part of what I did in my thinking of like how to think about this too is like, oh, okay, so what you're saying is the shortcut isn't like I need to wait for the ultimate wormhole technology to actually make a shortcut. I just need to find the clearest way there that's already there. And there's not, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
I think like, because when I hear the other stuff, that's kind of like, well, I need the ultimate wormhole technology. And that's how I framed it up in my mind.
that's yeah. The shortcut is the process. Actually might be better to say the shortcut is the process, because the process is, where do I really want to go? Where am I really? And here's just another pro tip that from my experience with, talking with thousands of prospects and working with hundreds of clients, is most people have a pretty good idea of what they really want. Close enough. Most people actually don't know really where they are. And part of that is, and you can't say this at the beginning because nobody wants to work on, like, nobody wants to accept that they don't actually know who they are, right? Because of what we talked about, they espouse all these values. I believe in faith and friendliness and honesty and fairness and blah 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 blah, and then they act like assholes all day long. Well, that's espoused values not lining up with virtuous action, which means, so ultimately, the way that you become the best version of yourself is to stop doing all the things that are like, again, to your point, Cato, like, stop doing all the things that are preventing you from being the best version of yourself. Stop stop the limited thinking and stop the limiting behaviors that are impeding your ability to become the better version of yourself that you say that you want to be. And that whole, like, Nick Peterson has this whole presentation on Dala, which you can interpret as don't act like an asshole or directions for acting like an adult, whichever, flavor, but basically acting like an asshole is saying, this is what I want, but acting in a way that is never going to get you there. And so that's why we have to have that awakening phase. Like, we have to wake up to the fact that we say we want this, but we're actually behaving in ways, and it's not our fault, because we're human beings acting like human beings. Human beings believe what they believe because they believe it. That's why, think about the media. What is the media? What is media really? Media is distribution. What are they distributing? Anyone want to guess?
or info. I don't know.
Yeah, but they're distributing information that confirms your bias. Fox is speaking to one segment of the population, and MSN, there's an MSNBC or whatever, is speaking to another part of the population. And everybody's getting what they want. Oh, these people get me because they believe what I believe, simply because I believe it. And oh, look, over there we have an enemy that we can throw rocks at, which only makes solidifies our beliefs. The thing is, most of our beliefs are actually false beliefs and biases in disguise. And so that's the, we have to wake up to that. That's the hardest part. It took me a long time to realize that, like, I was going to write a book called Start With Who. Nobody wants to read a book called Start With Who, because that whole self-awareness thing, it really, for most people, it really is, it's just, it's too frightening, and it's too um confrontational. What do you mean? What do you mean I'm not open-minded? What do you mean I'm not considerate enough? What do you mean I lack empathy? Like,
So you're so that makes me think because the first thing you talked about was this awakening. So it seems like what you're talking about when you're guiding, when you're coaching people, if that I was surprised to learn that most people know where they wanted to go, but now that you've said it, I was like, oh, that might be true about, and well, what they don't recognize is where they are and who they are in that. And so because you began with that awakening, now it's making me just think about what that really means. As opposed to I need to wake up and get busy, which is the way it gets taken a lot of times, especially in, oh, we're going to help you make your things happen. But you're talking about a whole other thing. And that's kind of your major, it seems like that's your major job when you're at least beginning with a client, is guiding through an awakening
and you have
about that.
to do it. The way that that's done is never, like, I can't say, listen, before we get you where you want to go, we have to figure out where you are, and before we figure out where we are, we have to figure out why you're such an asshole. Like, that would not be a very good way to start that conversation. So storytelling, be messaging, subtext, it's what you have to do. It has to be inception. They have to see it for themselves and make it, and it has to feel like their idea, which is why, storytelling is so important. Like, that's like what you do. I mean, think about plays. There's like this thing that's happening, but underneath that is the actual message. Like, it's not a play, but my favorite example is Finding Nemo. What's Finding Nemo about? Oh, a boy goes on a, it's a quest. A boy goes on a quest to find himself. It's like, actually, no. Finding Nemo is about the dangers of being a helicopter parent. And the more that you try to protect something, the farther away you are pushing it. That's the B message, but it's never overtly stated in the storyline. So yes, and one of a marketing technique I learned a long time ago that has really served me well is, like, when you help someone reveal the problem that they actually have, or the false belief that they have, you have to let them know it's not their fault. And it's not, because it's humans acting like humans. Like, we are programmed. We're born with different temperaments and tolerances. We're born, there's all these biases exist in everyone in different amounts and in different situations. We our need for certainty and safety and belonging, is real, and then it's leveraged by parents and peers and um school and institutionalized occupation. They, all these things leverage all these things that keep us humble and hiding and staying kind of in this, in a little world. But when we wake up, like, I've been playing the game of life by the rules. I've been, playing the game of life that's called the pursuit of happiness. And I've got the house and the spouse and the kids in the famous colleges, and I've got the nice car, and I've got all the things, but I'm not happy. What's up with that? Because you bought a false bill of goods, not because you're stupid, but because you didn't have, like, whoever talked about another way of being in the world other than follow the rules, do what you're told, go to a good school, get good grades so you can go to another school, get good grades so that you can go out and get a good job so that you can start working your way up the corporate ladder, and then retire with all your stuff and die and leave it all behind. That's what we're waking up to. And when we wake up, when we start to think about, like, holy crap, I might actually have, limitless potential that I've not explored. That is all by itself a frightening proposition, which is why you have to learn these tools. Like, you have to understand system reliability. It's not about how many steps or how many tactics you have. It's about, what are the three things that I have to do, and how do I learn to do those three things better? Because that's how you're going to close the gap in less time, with less effort, and with less risk. Cato and I have hogged the entire conversation. Nasli, Penny, any questions, reflections? You're muted, Penny, but what you're saying is awesome. I just can't hear it.
There's a lot here, and it all makes a lot of sense. And I think I just need to get more, have it become more how I process.
Yes, I would say that is a very wise insight. Like, I'm not asking you to take anything I say at face value. These are just assertions that I'm making, based on my own experience and the experience of working with a lot of other people on this stuff. And what I know for sure is that this all has to be processed in a way that works for you, that works for you in terms of your understanding, and works for you in terms of your ability to try it, right? But my what I would say is, if you go through that document where all this is outlined, that sequence is a sequence that I've seen work the most effectively and the most often. And
Yes.
honestly, if you take one thing from this, open loops. Don't go to Google every time somebody shares something that you don't know or understand. Sit with the uncertainty of unknowing and consider, open. It opens up curiosity and consideration, which sparks creativity and helps you, seek out collaborators so that you can process this stuff. The big thing
Yeah.
for me was empathy. When I took the marketing seminar and Seth was talking about empathy all the time, I like intellectually maybe understand what empathy is, but I don't like. And so I would ask people, and they tell me what they thought empathy was, and I say, that doesn't sound like empathy. And then my wife and I spent a year talking about it, and it was that for a whole year of just considering what empathy really is, I actually finally was able to understand it and employ it in my content and my engagement with, communities and coaching situations, and all of that. So the open loops is one of the biggest ones.
I agree to that. And to get to that step, for me anyway, it's been getting that sense of competence and confidence, the agency piece, that because I've caught myself in my writing as well as in my conversations, where if I was talking to me, I wouldn't think I had as much confidence as it's almost like I'm looking for that other person to affirm where I'm at. And I don't know if that's something that's common, but That's what I've discovered recently, that as I've gotten more aware of it, I can change it, and then let's see what happens. I don't
Well, we
know.
talked about this, you and I yesterday, and then Cato brought this up at one of the calls recently. Like, you have to have that, have to have a sense of humor. You have to think of it as playing. The thing about playing a game is you have to play it. You don't work it. You don't, grit and grind and hustle. You play, and play is expansive and uh, cultivates joy and cultivates equanimity and all the things that you need to lead a thriving life.
Yeah.
I'll put Cato's comment in the Nasli, we're going to end with you. If you've got any questions or reflections that you want to share.
Yeah, so uh, a lot of what we talked about resonated with me. I think two things really stood out. One was getting to know where you are right now, and getting to know, who are you? Getting to know yourself. And it's interesting because a few weeks ago, I had this a conversation with one of the deans, so, big wigs, big cheeses at the university. And she said the point of advising is to help students set goals. And I said, no, that's not enough. It's to help students to learn who they are so that they can learn how to learn and be set for life. And they just laughed at me. And
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I tendered my resignation. I was like, I think we're off here. But I had been thinking of resigning for some time.
That is a really
Yeah.
fascinating story. And yeah, that's, my, I'll end with these two shares. I like a lot of people fell in love with Simon Sinek and Start With Why and loved his TED Talk and followed his work for a long time. But over time, I became more and more kind of disillusioned with that approach because, um, well, there's some things that he says that are just plain wrong. Like your why is established by the time you're in your 20s and it never changes. It's like, really? Because I can tell you my why has changed over time. But then the whole idea, like, again, of starting with, like, why would you start with your reason for being if you don't know who you are, if you don't know where you actually want to go? Like that, those things seem to me to be a little bit more important. And that why is an emergent property of getting clearer about who you are and getting closer to what you actually want in life. Purpose emerges from that. Um, and so, but the other thing that you said, that whole thing about, and Penny touched on this too, like doing that self-reflection, that self-awareness work, so hard. And the reason why it's so hard actually comes back to empathy. Because I can look, I know all of you well enough to know that you are profoundly empathetic human beings, that you really, I think, for me, we too often conflate empathy and compassion, but it's the effort of empathy that leads to the action of compassion. It's the effort to see, hear, and understand someone's situation, that leads you to take action to help that person without judgment, without attachment, and all that sort of thing. And as good as all of us in this room are at practicing empathy on others, if I were to crawl into any of our heads and listen to the internal dialogue, I'm pretty sure that I would hear lots of unempathetic conversations going on much of the time. And which begs the question, can you truly practice empathy fully toward others if you're not able to practice it fully toward yourself? And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do, is to be as forgiving and letting go of those unhealthy and unhelpful narratives that we carry around, so that we can actually practice empathy from the inside out. instead of the other way around. So with that homework, I wish you all well. I really have enjoyed these sessions. It's really helped me clarify, and I've changed a lot of the way the book is outlined through this. So I really appreciate you all attending and your feedback and your questions and your reflections and support. I can't even remember. I got really excited about doing the next one already, and so I scheduled it. But I don't remember what it's going to be. So I'm going to just take a quick look at my calendar, because I think I scheduled it for next week because I was so excited. Oh, yeah. So I called it Catalyst, how to get clear about closer to what you want in life. But it's basically, we're going to walk through the engineering luck process in that one. So if you want to mark your calendars, that will be at 2 p.m. next Wednesday. And that will be a really good one, but it'll be all packed into one 30-minute session, not broken up into 3 sessions over 6 weeks.
It's good. You can't go to sleep when you have to do that.
Right. That's right. No
Not
napping.
that I would, not that I would.
No, we've never seen you close your eyes and nod off. Ever. All right, gang. Thank you so much. And hope to see you on the Friday call. And Penny, I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you, Scott. And it's good to see you all,
Bye-bye.
Natalie, Penny. Thank you so much.
Yes.